Tutoriales de gramática.
Grammar tutorials.
Construcciones impersonales.
Impersonal constructions. What is an impersonal construction? Impersonal constructions are sentences that have no identified subject. A good example of impersonal constructions are structures we use to talk about the weather.
En invierno, en Buenos Aires llueve mucho.
Sentences formed with I to talk about the existence of something are also examples of impersonal constructions.
En Guatemala hay muchos volcanes.
As well as some sentences with the pronoun se.
En México se hablan muchas lenguas.
Impersonal constructions used to talk about the weather. In Spanish, impersonal constructions are used to refer to meteorological phenomena, with weather verbs such as llover, nevar, granizar, etc., that are never conjugated in any form except the third person singular.
Llover, llueve. Nevar, nieva. Granizar, graniza.
Speakers follow the same principle in English when they say, it's raining, it's snowing, or it's sleeting, since these impersonal verbs are only ever conjugated in the third person singular. Please note, in English, subject pronouns must always be used if a subject is not stated, since verb endings in English rarely help us distinguish between possible subjects. You can never say rains by itself. You must say it rains or it is raining. That it is often called a dummy subject. That is, it only serves as a kind of placeholder, but does not refer to any entity in particular. In Spanish, however, these impersonal verbs conjugated in the third person singular never appear with a word that corresponds to that it in English.
Llueve.
Impersonal constructions containing the verb hacer are used to talk about heat, cold, wind, and other weather phenomena.
Hace sol. Hace viento. Hace frío. Hace calor. Hace buen tiempo. Hace mal tiempo. Hace buen día. Hace mal día. Hace 30 grados.
The verb estar is used with adjectives such as nublado, cloudy, and soleado, sunny.
Está nublado. Está soleado.
Finally, I and other forms of the verb haber are used with nouns such as niebla, fog, or tormenta, storm.
Hay niebla. Hay tormenta.
Impersonal constructions with the verb haber. When the verb haber is used to communicate the existence of something, it is an impersonal construction, and therefore it is only conjugated in the third person singular. I is a special form of the present indicative of the verb haber, which in English can be expressed as there is or there are.
En este barrio hay muchos hoteles.
A verbal periphrasis is made up of two verb forms, a conjugated verb and an impersonal form, an infinitive, a gerund, or a past participle. The verbal periphrasis, I que plus infinitive, is impersonal and expresses the obligation to do something. This very common structure can be translated into English several different ways, such as one must, an impersonal you must, the impersonal we must, or as a passive something should be done.
Para aprender bien una lengua, hay que practicar mucho.
Impersonal constructions with the verb hacer. The third person singular of the verb hacer is used to mark how long ago something took place.
¿Llegaste a Chicago el año pasado? No, llegué hace 2 años.
That is to say, 2 years have gone by since I arrived. This impersonal construction, formed by hace plus amount of time, is rendered into English as ago. Note that many Spanish learners tend to produce sentences like Llegué a Chicago 2 años pasados, but this is not correct Spanish. Impersonal se. The pronoun se and a verb in the third-person conjugation is very useful when we do not know who is carrying out the action, or if we prefer not to say.
El español se estudia en muchos países de Europa.
Or when we wish to make a generalization.
En mi pueblo se vive muy bien, sobre todo en verano.
Or when we relay instructions on how to do something.
Para hacer guacamole, primero se pela la cebolla y se pica el chile.
This construction is also used to talk about the practices, customs, and the spoken or unspoken rules of a given place.
En México se usa mucho la palabra carro, pero en España se dice coche y en otros países se oye más auto. Aquí no se permiten animales.
Verbs with a direct object. In impersonal constructions with verbs that have a direct object expressed in the form of a plural noun, the verb in the se plus third-person conjugation is plural as well.
En México se usan muchas palabras de origen náhuatl, cuate, elote, etc.
If the direct object is a singular noun, the verb remains in the singular.
En México se usa mucho la palabra carro.
Other ways to express impersonality. Another way to express an idea in the impersonal without a defined subject and without a subject pronoun is to conjugate the verb in the third person plural. This form can be used to talk about actions carried out by one person or by several people when the exact identity of the subject is unknown or unimportant for the idea you are trying to get across.
En mi universidad abren la biblioteca a las 7. En España cenan bastante tarde, a las 9:30 o 10 de la noche.
This is similar to English, except that English always requires the subject pronoun they, even though that they does not refer to a specific set of people if there is no defined referent. They open the library at 7. They eat very late in Spain, at about 9:30 or 10 at night. Unlike English, however, if you use the subject pronouns ellas or ellos in Spanish, the sense of the impersonal is lost, and the listener understands that there are specific people involved in the action who were previously defined.
Abren la biblioteca a las 7. En España cenan bastante tarde, a las 9:30 o 10 de la noche.
Another way to express something without specifying a particular individual or set of individuals as the subject is to conjugate the verb in the informal second-person singular, the to form. This form can refer to anyone in general and is not limited to the to standing before the speaker. That is, we use it for a generic subject whose experience applies to the person speaking, the person they're speaking to, and indeed anybody and everybody's experience. This use of the verb in the to form is very typical of spoken Spanish.
Cuando viajas en tren, vas más tranquilo que en auto. Contemplas el paisaje, tomas algo en la cafetería.
Note the close parallel to English. When you travel by train, you can travel more calmly than you can in a car. You look at the scenery. You can get something to eat in the cafeteria car. Another way to express something in an impersonal way is to use the structure uno or una plus third person singular. Just like the impersonal to conjugation of the verb, this form is very common in spoken discourse.
Cuando uno está deprimido, no piensa con claridad.
The same possibility exists in English, though the corresponding pronoun one sounds very formal in English. When one gets depressed, one does not think clearly.